what a difficult 24 to 48 hours it is turning out to be for our local universities right now. You looking at the situation that we were just talking about at ODU, that now is going to have implications that go into the waters of whether or not this was an act of terror, as we know that the shooter there, Mohammed Baylor Jallo, has already a criminal background tied to ISIS. Now, federal investigators, the FBI, looking into that situation. Meanwhile, ODU canceling classes yesterday and today as they go into spring break next week, and the university figuring out how they're going to emotionally, mentally move forward after experiencing this crisis as a community. But we can go back before that, and knowing that even on Norfolk State University's campus, as they are preparing to come back from spring break, they too lost one of their students while that student was home in Maryland for spring break, shot during a pickup basketball game just earlier this week on Monday. And now we're looking at two universities, UVA and George Mason, that are having to deal with bomb threats on the campus, students needing to be evacuated from places in which they go for a safe space to study. It is certainly turning out to be a very challenging 24 to 48 hours, even spanning back to earlier this week with Norfolk State University for a lot of our students here in Hampton Roads and in the Commonwealth. I want to get back to the situation that we are now following, though, with ODU. We're going to get to later on within this stream a conversation where we heard from the former special agent in charge with the FBI in the Norfolk field office about where this investigation could potentially go forward. We're going to hear from Brian Dugan in a conversation with him in a bit. We also were able to sit down with ABC News chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas earlier today about his experience in covering cases like this and some of the previous reporting he has done and how it fits into some of the concerns that he had been reporting and hearing from federal officials about attacks here in the homeland. But right now, what I would like to do, we have Madison Schlegel, who is in the studio with us, and we were all here. Madison, you were out in the field. We were here in the studio, all trying to make sense of what was going on, figuring it out. We now have a better understanding that we have heard from FBI, from Norfolk Police. We've heard from ODU Police about the timeline of what transpired here, the moments in which Mohammed Jallo walked into that classroom. I'm bringing in Madison so we can take down this timeline, catch us up to speed on where we started. I know that's what you're reporting on today.
Yeah, again, you said it there. It's been a tough couple hours and last day for all of the students that are here in the area. But again, we were one of the first crews on scene, if not the first reporter that was up live and helping to bring the people the true gravity of the situation of what it was. And we were on scene by 11 a.m. And right now we're finding out through dispatch audio that was sent to us through Norfolk Police Department that first original call, those calls started coming in at around 10:43 in the morning, where they were getting calls of students running out of a building on ODU's campus and that there was potentially an active shooter. Now, if you're listening to that dispatch audio, we got sent probably about 30 minutes of it, and it's basically at the tail end of, you can hear them calling more units to ODU, and then after they get those initial calls in at 10:43, just 2 minutes later at 10:45, they're getting a call that says that there are at least a couple people in the room that have been shot, and it looks like the shooter has been deceased. Now, we know from the statement from ODU's police chief yesterday in the press conference, they said that those crews were on scene by 10:47. So already we've got a very short time span here from 10:43 when we first got that call in to 10:47 crews responding, and then just 3 minutes later at 10:50 we get reports that the threat has been, quote, neutralized. Obviously, we didn't get that news. That news wasn't released to us until around 11:30 yesterday, but it was at 10:50 when officers were able to get inside of that room and kind of officially declare what had happened. Now, at that point, at that 10:50 mark, between that 4:53 phone call to dispatch and that 10:50 mark, there were reports that the shooter was already dead. So they were getting those calls from inside the classroom and those reports. But I think here, we've said it time and time again, but this quick response time, the police chief at ODU really credited to the fact that they've been running these drills, that they know what to do in these circumstances. And I think you could really hear that from listening to the dispatch audio that we received, basically the dispatcher calling for each units, and how they respond to a situation like this is really more formulaic than I think we really know. And as we're out on the street trying to show the people what's happening, there are other checks and balances that are being done behind the scenes. So those were the quick initial calls of when it came in and when we kind of figured out what was happening inside of that room. But police had Hampton Boulevard closed by 11 a.m. I mean, by the time we were there, by the time we got on scene at 11 a.m., Hampton Boulevard had already been shut down by police, and luckily they were able to let us through to get a little closer to that scene there. But Hampton Boulevard stayed closed for most of that day and didn't reopen until about 2 p.m. So that's when we saw those officers starting to leave the area. But there really was a heavy police presence until around 2 o'clock yesterday. But I think, going back to your initial question, Eugene, just the quick time span that we saw here from 10:43, Norfolk police getting this first phone call, to 10:50, not only is the suspect dead, but we've got police inside and responding or hands-on with students escorting them out of the building. I think to say within a span of 10 minutes, all of this happening, I mean, it gives you goosebumps to hear about how the faculty, the students, and all the officers really had to work together swiftly and quickly in order to make sure that everybody was okay.
And we did see, as we're looking at the video now, from what you saw on the scene, what our cameras were capturing about that response there, we knew, again, that it was federal, it was state, it was local, it was university, all law enforcement there, acting very quickly. And, you know, it's interesting. We continued to hear, rightfully so, from our understanding, people praise, as you said, law enforcement's response to all of this, how quickly they were going through the process as you just detailed out. In this circumstance, however, it was the students who were able to subdue and kill the gunman even before really the officers, from what we understand now, were able to get to it. And, you know, that's going to be another thing, I'm sure, as everyone's going to be wanting to know what happened inside that room, and the brave account that these students, their actions that they made to act so swiftly in that and be able to do that and to do it without a gun. We know that at this point, that they did not shoot him to death. And so that's going to be pretty interesting to hear that for the first time. Madison, I'll ask you this too. You talked to a lot of students yesterday. And I thought some of the conversations that you had were of, you know, even in the midst of tragedy, the more refreshing ones from some of the perspectives that some of these students had. As they were talking about the anxieties and the fear, there was one young man in particular who truly had the mindset of, I want to make sure others are okay, and was thinking about them too. What were your takeaways from the students that you talked to yesterday, and their mentality and emotions just moments after this?
I think what we're learning is that this generation of students has made this issue personal for them. And I think we saw that in the students who took the time out of their day to speak with us. We have a very delicate job to go to a scene where we know that parents are concerned and worried. They just want to know if their kid is okay, let alone plastering their face on the news. But we speak to students in a very, very vulnerable state. And in many of these instances, we had students come up to us to say, hey, we saw what happened. Hey, I was inside the building. Hey, this, X, Y, and Z. And I think their fervor to want to talk about it, to share their experience, to share their point of view in saying that this is real. Everyone at this point has a story of someone that they're connected to that has a story. And for so many of these students, this became their story. And for them to have the empathetic and positive rhetoric that they did in the hours of tragedy was harrowing. Again, it's hard not to get emotional about it because we're trying to get the facts and the information to make sure that we can tell everybody what's happening in a seamless situation. But as I always say, at the end of the day, we're people. And this impacts everybody in that stratosphere. I know we saw even people who were conducting traffic yesterday, officers in vests hugging each other. It wasn't just the students that were embracing each other. It was also the officers who were dealing with that time and that stress. As we were interviewing one of those students, he had spoken about how the first person he thought of in the building was his girlfriend. He knew his girlfriend was also in the building. He was in the building when this happened. He encountered the moments that he heard a tussle, a fight. He didn't necessarily hear gunshots, but he heard a mass group of people fighting. Now, unfortunately, we know what that was. That was those ROTC students jumping into action there. But he said his first thought of concern was for his girlfriend. He found his girlfriend, and then they were trying to get to safety, and it was an ODU staff member that stopped them in the hallway and pulled them into an office. That ODU staff member stopping and pulling multiple other students into the office. They were in an office of 4 to 6 other students. And to know that his first thought was, I hope my girlfriend's okay, and then post that, wanted to turn around and say, my biggest thoughts right now go to the people who were in that room, who had to face that threat, because I saw that meaning I saw the aftermath of it, which was the tail end of the situation. And he said, had I been in the wrong moment there, wrong place, wrong time, that could have been me. Had that ODU staff member not stopped these children in the hallway, or students in the hallway, pardon me, what could have happened? And I think we've talked about it as well as the devastation that could have happened here, but given the impact and the knowledge of the students that were inside this room, it turned out to be a much different scenario. And I know that tonight, so many different communities are mourning losses, more than one. And I think on top of seeing these students support themselves, as we were interviewing this young man and his girlfriend was standing out of camera, clearly too shaken to speak with us. And we're not going to push anyone who isn't comfortable to talk with us. But out of the corner of my eye, while I'm talking with you live, Eugene, while I'm interviewing this young man, Kelvin, next to me, I see that his girlfriend is moved to tears hearing his words, and another student who was walking by stopped and said, hey, I saw this interaction. The student stopped, said, hey, are you okay? You could tell that these students didn't know each other, but this young girl opened her arms for this other student. And to see that type of encounter happening peripherally when we're just trying to get the story of what happened inside the room, I think in those moments we start to forget the webbing effect of how many people this touches. And in those moments, strangers were turned community members yesterday, and we saw that firsthand.
Yeah, I think that was so well said. I think it's the double edge of this becoming so consistent across our country. On one end, you have students that know what to do. And I'm not just talking about the ROTC students who absolutely acted in an almost unimaginable way of bravery and ending the threat there. That is a specific level of training that they had to have. But for the other students who may not have that training, but they do know those words, run, hide, fight, it's something that's in your mind now if you're in this generation, our generation and younger, because you've seen it so happen. That's on one side of the coin. On the other side of it is it's still not really real until it hits home for you and when you experience it hand to hand. And you can see that playing out, I think, for members of our community and certainly the young people you were speaking with.
Yeah, I want to bring back another interview that we did. This young man, John, he was inside Constant Hall when the shooting happened. He described to us that he just felt worry and he felt the rumble of people exiting the building. He said it sounded like a stampede, screaming, footsteps, loud. And I think what he said is he said, I was just worried about the other people in the building. I wasn't worried about me because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, these kids have such, I should stop saying kids, truly young adults, people who are at the university. These young adults have such a receptive mind to understanding the reality around them and knowing what's happening in this world. And I think what we saw yesterday is that they want their stories heard and they want their stories told. And because of that, they want justice at the end of the day. They don't want to see any other school go through this. And I know you and Sarah have been tracking it all day, but those other threats that we've heard today at other schools, unfortunately, it's sad to hear, but it comes not even 24 hours after what the FBI is calling a terror attack on ODU. And so it's unfortunate that we might see some of these other instances pop up and sprinkle around. And again, I think these students really do have something to say about it, and to hear their empathy and to hear their want for change is very impactful at a time that can be heavy and dark.
Well, Sarah has pulled up one of your interviews. I do believe it's with the young man that you were just talking about. So let's listen to him share with Madison yesterday his experience, the moment that he realized something was going wrong inside of the building.
John, do you mind telling me a little bit about what was happening in class when you guys heard that alert?
Yeah, well, it was just normal class, and then suddenly there was kind of a thud, and then a tons of running down the hallway and screaming, and then the fire alarm went off, and then it was just a bunch of movement, and it kind of felt like a fire drill. And then we got outside, and someone yelled that it was an active shooter or something like that, and we all kind of like ran out of there.
So you said that people were running. What was going through your head when not excitement, but the kind of danger that flashed through everybody's head kind of started to set in?
Yeah, honestly, I was just hoping that the people that were involved were all right and that it would all settle out. I mean, I wasn't worried about myself. Like, I know where I'm going if I'm leaving, so it's no biggie. But just hoping that everyone else is okay.
Right, and so this is just a typical Thursday for you guys here, but unfortunately this kind of massive event has now happened. Hopefully we're going to learn more information from police about what exactly has happened. But seeing this kind of action on campus, is this something that you've never seen before?
Yeah, not something I've ever seen, not something I've ever witnessed at all, definitely.
And seeing this amount of police here right now, are you a little maybe struck by the amount of officers and police officers we keep rolling up?
Yeah, definitely. I was very surprised that but it's good because they're here to protect us and take care of us. And so that's a good sign that we've got this many people watching our back.
And they certainly had a lot of people watching their back. I mean, the response was swift and it was large, and it came from all different angles and levels of departments. Madison, thank you so much. Great job yesterday, and your hustle and the rest of our team too.
You guys too, yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where you said it really well there at some point in your answer. It's not easy for people to talk and share with us on their worst moments. And so we're certainly appreciative that they would take the time to trust us, but also to just share their thoughts and their emotions so that it's not just us, but our entire community that can get a better gauge for what's going on. And of course, in that scenario, it's a matter of public safety too. But great job yesterday. Thank you so much. Madison Schlegel, your report is going to start airing today on 13 News Now. At what time?
4.
At 4 o'clock. You can catch her there on our linear platform.